goes weak. If you remember a success, your arm goes strong. If you send out love to people, your arm goes strong. If you send out hate and resentment, your arm goes weak. We can demonstrate this right in the classroom, and this is something that I recommend parents teach their children, because if you say, I hate math, your arm goes weaker. You actually get worse at your ability to concentrate on math. You may not like math. It may not be your favorite subject, but you don't want to be saying those kind of things. Here's a cool experiment you can practice, especially if you're listening on the speakerphone now, but if not, you can try this later. Take your hands, and at the bottom of your hands, you'll notice that where your wrist is, that there are lines, usually one or two lines. If you line those up exactly on each hand, put them together like you're praying, you'll find that one middle finger is longer than the other. Take the shorter hand, just look at it and stare at it for about 10 times, say, grow longer. And then put it back on those same lines, and amazingly, that hand will now be longer than the other hand. Then you put your hand in front of you and say, back to normal 10 times, your hand actually shrinks and goes back to its normal size. It sounds like the weirdest woo-woo stuff on the planet, but what we now know is every thought you think creates a biochemical change in your body, and it controls your emotions, and so we have to take responsibility for our thoughts, for our images, and for our behaviors.
Of course, taking 100% responsibility doesn't mean that we have 100% control.
No, not at all.
Sometimes stuff happens, the tsunami hits, but then your choice is, how am I going to respond to that?
Exactly.
I really like that. It's so powerful. I keep trying to teach that to my children as well. So let's talk about the third principle, which is decide what you want. Why is having clear and measurable goals so important in life?
Well, if you look at the way the culture is lined up, about 3% of the people control 90% of the wealth. And if you look at the research on goal setting, only about 3% of people every year set measurable objectives for themselves, their lives, their families, their business, and their homes. And so there's a great correlation between goal setting and achievement. A study was done at Yale, I believe, where they asked the graduating class if they had goals for their life. And about 3% said yes. They said what they were. They went back at their 25th reunion and asked how many people had become millionaires. And the same 3% were the majority of the millionaires. And so the reality is that goals are very important. I just talked to a real estate group about a week ago here in Santa Barbara where I live. And here we are in January. I asked, how many of you have goals for the year? About 15 hands out of 150 went up. And so if you want to really up-level your achievement, teach your kids to up-level theirs, you want to have written goals. What are your goals in each of the subject arenas? What's your goal for this next week? And then what I do in my book is I have 7 areas of goals that I request individuals, families create for themselves. What are your financial goals for the year? Income, net worth, cash flow, etc. Your relationship goals. Maybe you want to get closer to your sister. You want to heal your relationship with your mother. Maybe one of your teenagers is going nuts and you want to get them back under control. What are your relationships for your career and your job? What are your relationships for fun time and recreation? What are your goals for that? What are your goals for health and fitness? Do you have personal goals? Just things you want to do because you want to do them, like maybe you want to learn to play the piano or you want to visit the Eiffel Tower. And finally, what goals do you have in the areas of making a contribution? And if you set goals in each of those 7 areas of your life, you're going to have a balanced life. And here's the neat part. Research shows if you just write down clear, measurable goals, how much by when, not just lose weight, but I'll weigh 150 pounds by July 15th, or I'll weigh 185 pounds by August 30th, and put them in a drawer. And don't look at them for a year. You're going to achieve 50% more of your goals simply because you thought about them, wrote them down, and made them measurable. Now, if you look at them every day and close your eyes and see yourself as already having achieved them, you'll increase your achievement by 200%. And so how much by when, be very specific. And a technique I teach parents, especially for homeschooling, take your refrigerator, put a big piece of construction paper or flip chart paper up there and draw a goalpost like in a football field. Then cut out some footballs about the size of 3x5 cards, and then everyone writes their goals on them that they want to achieve. You put their name, like in my family it'd be Travis, my son, and he wants to make the swimming team. And Christopher wants to get the lead in the play this year, and so forth. Then what they do is they put those below the crossbar on the goalpost. And I put my goals there as well, and my wife does. And then every time someone achieves a goal, they get to move it up above the crossbar. We get to celebrate them at dinner that night. They can pick their special meal. We'll cook it for them, and they get to brag about it. And what that does, it keeps everybody focused on supporting everybody else. in achieving their goals. And the last thing is we now know that if you take and cut out pictures of your goals and put them on like a big piece of cardboard construction paper, or you make a dream book by having goals on 8.5 by 11 paper, which you either laminate or put in page protectors, and if you look at that every day, it keeps you focused on the achieving of those goals.
Gosh, I really love this. Those are great ideas. Jack, what is the difference between like New Year's resolutions and goals?
Well, New Year's resolutions are things like, I'm going to lose weight this year, or I'm not going to eat chocolate, or I'm going to go to the gym and work out. Those are kind of nice, intentions, perhaps desires, but they're not goals. A goal has to be measurable in time and space. How much by when? And then you need to write it down. Something about writing it down. My friend Mark says, as soon as you think it, ink it, get it into writing, and then review those every day. And the other thing we know from habit, people that have been experts in changing habits like weight loss, stopping smoking, etc., is if you'll declare your goal publicly to a lot of people, so if they see you breaking it, they kind of get on your case about it. And lastly, is find some consequence you're going to pay if you don't reach the goal. Like if I said I'm going to give the Ku Klux Klan $1 million if I don't achieve my weight loss goal, there's no way I want to support that organization. And if I say that publicly to a lot of people, I now have a very intense motivation to make sure I don't not keep that goal.
That reminds me of Mother Teresa's advice. She said, put your attention on what you want, not on what you don't want. And I guess so many times with New Year's resolutions, it's focused on the negative.
Yeah,
whereas
I'm not
goals
going
are focused on what you do want.
Exactly. Mother Teresa, to build on what you said, she once wrote that I read, she said someone asked her to come to an anti-war rally. And she said, I'll never go to an anti-war rally, but if you have a pro-peace rally, I'll show up.
Oh, I love that. And I think about some of the programs in school, how they're anti-drug. I think, boy, wouldn't it be better to have a pro-health? A pro-health rally or a whole pro-health instead of anti-violence? Wouldn't it be better to focus on what we want?
Sure. As soon as you have a war on drugs or a war on poverty, all your attention's on drugs and poverty. And think about this. If I tell a kid, don't slam the screen door, what image comes up in your mind? Slamming the screen door. And we always have to do what our images are creating in our head. So what you want to do is say, hey, remember, Bob, close the door very gently. And then they do it because that's what that image creates.
Of course, so many negative comments to our children all the time, too, instead of catching them being good. Boy, your room looks beautiful. Oh, your bed looks nice. Instead, so many times we're haranguing them all the time. Oh, you're going to be late again. Oh, your hair looks terrible. I told you have to brush your teeth. So it's focusing on what we don't want instead of on what we do want.
Yeah, I read a very good book once called Prescriptive Parenting. And what it said was that mostly when we describe our children's current behavior, we're actually prescribing their future behavior. So when I say you're a messy kid, your room's a mess, I'm actually helping them create an image of having that be a mess in the future. But if I say to a kid, I bet in an hour there's going to be at least 3 or 4 things picked up in this room. And then you come back and go, oh, you got your football off the floor. Great, I bet in an hour there'll be more stuff off the floor. What you're doing is slowly programming them to do what you want rather than beating them up for the image of what you don't want.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the 11th principle.
Sure.
Which is the power of visualization. I think about the basketball players who are at the free throw line and how they're always, picturing in their mind that swish. And I assume that that's what you mean by visualization. And how can we apply this as parents and homeschool teachers?
Well, I think visualization and its understanding of it is probably one of the biggest missing links in American education, both in the homeschooling world and in the public schooling world. We now know, we've all heard, the picture's worth 1,000 words. Well, that's true inside your head as well as what you see outside. And so we can apply these principles to athletics, academics, business, weight loss, you name it. One of the really cool studies that was done recently was, well, let me say this first. When you visualize something as already completed in your head, getting an A, kicking the ball through the field goal, being nice to your sister, whatever it is, what happens is that creates a blueprint in the unconscious mind. And if you do that repeatedly over time, it starts to program you. In other words, if you were saying, I'm going to go drive my car to the supermarket, the first thing that comes up is a picture of your car sitting out in the driveway or in the garage. It kind of tells you where you're going to go next. And so we have to have those clear pictures. They did a study at NASA recently. They took about 10 astronauts and they had them wear concave lens goggles for 30 days. And they had to wear them when they were sleeping, taking a shower. They had to keep them on 24 hours a day. But what concave lens goggles do is they make your world